I spent the last few days in Kenya with the president, um, and I got to watch a masterclass in how to control a room. And it got me thinking, what does being rich look like to you? If you remember absolutely nothing else, the most important thing you must remember is this: the secret to success is being liked by people with money. I want to teach you everything that I have learned over time about the networking game. Every single one of the things I'm going to talk about, I am also going to tell you how to start. Just try one each day and you will see how incredibly you will change your circle. Since I was 16 years old, I've been obsessed with finding people who are generational and soaking up everything I could from them. If you allow me to use my own experiences, I am going to do my best to give you information that I think you can use starting now. But let me validate why I know what I'm talking about. At the age of 15, I was shipped out of Zimbabwe to look for a better life abroad in the UK. Like most people who end up in the diaspora, I had no connections, I had no money, I had a head full of dreams. I just wanted money and I had a zero game plan. And my contacts today are probably the most powerful men and women in the world. I have dined with Bob Geldof. I've spent a summer with Bill Marriott's family who own the Marriott hotels. I want to tell you the story of 9 people who are invaluable in my network and what you can do right now to find your path to your own power circle. If you don't make smart moves to figure yourself out while you're in the diaspora, you're going to end up incredibly frustrated with a ceiling above you that you can't break until you go back home. So let me give you an introduction to the power of mentorship. When I was 18 years old, I was privileged to be mentored by Terry Mansfield, the extraordinary, at the time, president of the Hearst Corporation. If you've never heard about it, they oversee renowned enterprises such as the Oprah Winfrey Show, Productions, ESPN, they own Cosmopolitan Magazine, the History Channel. And through my time with him, I witnessed how executives, influenced by his vision, communicated, how they made decisions, how they interacted with their peers, both those they admired and those who they merely tolerated. I grasped a pivotal lesson that true wealth stems not from mere connections, but from those who believe in you and actively support your journey to success. Astonishingly, in the diaspora, between 70% and 80% of all job opportunities never surface in the public eye. Instead, they circulate through informal conversations and personal networks. These valuable prospects emerge from individuals who recognize your potential and are genuinely excited to contribute to your success. One remarkable advantage the diaspora affords is the talent to navigate multiple worlds seamlessly. So here's the first challenge: your brand in the moments of uncertainty. One individual who has significantly uplifted me is Prophet Jibber Angel, arguably to me the wealthiest Zimbabwean in the United Kingdom. He is way more wealthy than people really see at face value. He opened my eyes to the critical importance of branding in the personal and professional success. Rupert's financial support during my first political campaign at the age of 24 was invaluable. He spent more than $500,000 just to see me give my political ambition a chance. He provided 10 billboards for me. He put up 2,000 T-shirts. He put up numerous posters. I don't think there's a tree in my constituency that didn't have a poster. Without Prophet Hubert Angel, my political success doesn't happen. It simply doesn't. Within just 7 seconds, people form an opinion about you, deciding whether or not they like you, whether or not they trust you, whether or not they are motivated to assist you. These judgments are born from instinct rather than from analytical thought processes. Your brand is a composite of what others perceive through their senses. I vividly remember and recall my initial meeting with Prophet Hubert Angel at his church. At the time, they were at Rainbow Towers, the hotel. Um, and I was in search of Teach Mataz. But while I was waiting for Teach Mataz, I met Prophet Angel instead. He was sitting steadily at the reception foyer with the security detail. It was very clear in every detail of his presence that everything was thoughtfully orchestrated. The scent of luxurious clothing was wearing Creed by Aventus, the perfume captivated the senses. His handshake was, really firm and warm, and he maintained eye contact in an unwavering manner that I had never spoken to anybody in this sense before. The cadence and depth of his voice, purely mesmerizing, and reinforcing a clear message of authority and success every time he spoke. He shared a profound insight with me. He said, people determine if they like you, if they trust you, and desire to help within the first 7 seconds. This decision is deeply rooted in their senses and not their logic. Over the years, Prophet Angel has guided me on various aspects of personal branding, covering everything from how he chooses his attires, from how he lays out his office, from his speaking rhythm. He emphasizes to me all the time that your brand is not just what you announce about yourself, it's what other people perceive about you when your words are not spoken. Do you get that? Here's the challenge, and I want to call it the heightening sensory awareness. How you do that? Let's cultivate an acute awareness of your sensory brand. Consider the following questions. Number one, what message does your scent convey when people meet you? What message does your handshake resonate when people meet you? How does your voice sound during introductions of your clothes? Do you communicate with your clothes? How do you navigate these environments? To enhance your self awareness, I want you to record a 30-second introduction and analyze both your tone and body language. Reflect upon this question: would a millionaire remember meeting me? Document your insights regarding the five senses. How do you want to smell? How do you want to sound? How do you want to look? How do you want to taste? How do you want to feel? By meticulously refining these elements, you will command any room that you enter with confidence and with presence. The journey toward building a powerful personal brand begins with self awareness and intentionality. Here's the second challenge. Every time I'm training, I call it the idea magnetism formula. And the blueprint is rich people don't invest in businesses, they invest in ideas. They invest in people who are caring. I mean, wealthy people are addicted to one thing above everything else. They're addicted to people who make them feel intellectually stimulated. And here's the story. I'm going to tell you more about Terry Mansfield, who I mentioned earlier. Rich people are idea addicts, he would always say to me. There was a Christmas dinner that I was spending with Terry, and that changed my complete understanding of wealth forever. I watched him interact with guests, CEOs, politicians, media owners. Every conversation followed the same pattern. The moment someone presented a novel idea, Terry's eyes lit up. His posture changed. He leaned in. He asked follow up questions. He remembered their names. But when people talked about their jobs, their achievements, their qualifications, his attention drifted. Polite, but distant. Over marshmallows and ice cream on Christmas night. I remember Terry explaining to me and says the Hearst Empire exists because William's father invested in his son's idea for yellow journalism. Facebook exists because Peter Thiel saw Zuckerberg's idea from social connection. For social connection, every fortune starts with someone betting on an idea, not a resume. Terry would always say poor people sell their time, middle class sell their skills, and rich people sell their ideas. And the richest people, they invest in other people's ideas. Terry taught me the formula. It's idea plus passion plus execution that brings you people magnetism. So here's the action plan that I want you to try on this point. Can you articulate one business idea so clearly, so compellingly, that a stranger would want to fund it within 60 minutes of hearing it or 60 seconds of hearing it? Which is what the world colloquially calls the idea elevator speech. Not about what you do, but what you've observed. Ideas must never be expressed in the sense of what you do. They must be expressed in the sense of what you figured out, what you think people could have done better. You have to practice that elevator presentation until you can deliver it with the passion of someone who genuinely believes they've discovered something important. This is for ideas people, people who are tormented by ideas that God gives them. These ideas that God gives you are not meant to torment you, they're really meant to be an instruction that require you to put work in them. The third challenge that I always go through with my clients is I call it the pastor plug principle. The blueprint of it is your spiritual leaders are often people who are counseling presidents, advising billionaires, and they sit on boards of major corporations. And here's the story I want to back this up with. When I was a young man and I was living in London, I met Pastor Olomo, who then introduced me to Governor Sanusi, who was the Nigerian Reserve Bank governor. Your spiritual leader is your strategic asset. When I was at the church Jeffme in North London, 2009, I remember, Pastor Olomo was leading a 3-month fasting program, and I committed to eating only after sunset every day for 90 days. My mind became sharper than it has ever been. But here's what changed my life forever. I spent one weekend at Pastor Olomo's house in Essex. Saturday evening, the doorbell rings. The pastor opens to reveal a distinguished guest, a man wearing a nice, impeccable suit, number one Savile Row suit. This was Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the most powerful financial figure in Africa at the time. I watched these two men talk for 3 hours. They discussed economic policy, investment opportunities, and political strategies. Sanusi asked Pastor Olomo for spiritual guidance on major financial decisions affecting millions of people. Later, Pastor Olomo took me to the side and said, "Son, people think pastors are just spiritual leaders. They don't understand that we counsel presidents, we advise billionaires, we sit on boards of major corporations. Every successful person needs someone who speaks to their soul, not just their wallet. If you have a church pastor, most people are going to be too proud or too naive to leverage that relationship properly. 6 months going to Pastor Olomo's church, he had connected me to opportunities in Nigeria that exposed me to real world that I couldn't ever imagined. And so your action today is how many successful people in your pastor's phone book could transform your life if they knew what you were working on. Schedule a private conversation with your pastor. Instead, share your vision and ask your pastor on your business ideas, how to navigate your next step. What is the next best step that I must make? Let them naturally think of people who could help you. Fair? Okay. Let's go to challenge number 4. I call it the intellect question gambit. And here's the blueprint. Intelligent people ask intelligent questions that don't seek information. They offer perspective. They don't make you look smart, they make the other people feel smart. They don't end conversations, they create intrigue. Few people can help powerful individuals think differently. Those few people get access to everything. And I'm going to tell you a story. It's about President Rupia Banda of Zambia, Harvard University 2010. President Rupia Banda of Zambia was giving a lecture on economic development. I was just another student in the audience until I raised my hand. Instead of asking a generic question, I said, "Mr. President, you've spoken about economic diversification, but isn't the real challenge that we're trying to build in the 21st century economies is that we're using 20th century thinking? What would Zambian economic policy look like if we started from scratch today?" The room went silent. President Rupia Banda stared at me for what felt like forever. Then he smiled and he said, "That's the first intelligent question I've been asked all week. What's your name and what would you do differently?" After this lecture, his aide, immediately after the lecture, the one aide came to me and said, "The president wants to meet you privately." That meeting led to my first job after university as personal advisor to President Rupia Banda. Here is what I learned. Intelligent questions don't seek information. They offer perspective. They don't make you look smart. They make the other person feel smart. And they don't end conversations. They create intrigue. President Rupia Banda taught me that anybody can ask what I think, but few people can help me think differently. Those people are the people who get access to everything. Your action point is, can you ask one question that makes a powerful person pause and say, I've never thought about it that way. Research one successful person who you want to meet. Study their public state, study their interviews, their speeches. Identify one assumption they always make. Craft a question that challenges that assumption respectfully while offering a fresh perspective. Challenge 5 is the bias alignment technique. Don't argue with their bias. Upgrade people's vision. Find the grain of truth in any wealthy person's opinion and use it as a foundation to build something bigger. I want to tell you a story about Zed Kudonaris, and I know he doesn't even like being mentioned in public, but he's done an incredible amount for me. And the lesson I want to tell you is how I learned how to agree with logic and upgrade rich people's vision. It was 2011, I think. I'm sitting across the table from Zed Kudonaris, one of the uh, most successful billionaires in Africa. I knew exactly why I was there. Zimbabwe's indigenization policy was destroying the economy, and he wanted my perspective as a young Zimbabwean. Most people would have either defended the policy or they would have attacked the policy. Both approaches would have ended the conversation. So instead, I studied Zed's previous statements. I listened to everything he was saying in the preamble to asking me the question. He believed in economic empowerment, but he was frustrated with poorly designed policies. So I aligned my bias first, then offered a superior vision. "Mr. Kudonaris, you're absolutely right that economic empowerment is essential. The indigenization policy is problematic not because the goal was wrong, but because it tried to redistribute existing wealth instead of creating new wealth. What if instead of taking 51% of existing businesses, we had a sovereign wealth fund that invested in Zimbabwean entrepreneurs building new industries? His eyes lit up. For the next 2 hours, we debated and exchanged an alternative economic model that could have transformed Zimbabwe. That conversation led to the largest consulting contract I've ever received. And I've looked after the communications of many of the businesses that Z Kudunaris is involved in. Because I didn't argue with his bias, I upgraded his perspective. So, your action for today is practice the bias alignment. And always think when you're addressing a bias, is always think in this framework to say, you're absolutely right about X. And here is how we could take that insight further, dash, dash, dash. Use this with every important conversation you're having. Let's go to challenge number 6. I call it the perspective or the personality disorder decoder. You are going to meet people who have just very, very different personalities in your professional career. Successful people often have personality traits that helped them build wealth, but also created psychological patterns that isolate. Understanding these patterns isn't about manipulation, it's about genuine connection. When you understand someone's physiological and psychological operating system, you can communicate in ways that make them feel truly seen instead of just managed. I'm gonna tell you a story about, and again, she hates it every time I say her name or tell a story, but I'm gonna tell you a story about Dr. Chiponduzo. Rich people are human too, is what she'd always say to me. And I remember it was 2020, COVID hit. My parents died 6 weeks apart. I'm drowning in grief. I'm making terrible business decisions. I'm burning relationships. That's when Dr. Chiponduzo entered my life. And Chipo was the shrink that saved me, but she was also the businesswoman that taught me something that revolutionized how I interact with wealthy people. During our sessions, she explained, successful people often have personality traits that help them to build wealth, but they also created physio and psychological patterns that isolate them. Understanding these patterns isn't about manipulation, it's about genuine connection. I've held that quote all my life since I met her. She continued, the billionaire who seems arrogant usually is overcompensating for deep insecurity. The investor who seems cold often is protecting themselves from emotional manipulation. The entrepreneur who seems scattered usually is managing multiple complex mental models simultaneously. Chipo taught me to recognize the perfectionist is just somebody who needs to feel intellectually superior but craves genuine respect. The controller is somebody who needs to feel in charge but desperately wants trustworthy partners. The achiever, somebody who needs constant validation but values authentic challenges. The isolator is somebody who needs emotional distance but craves genuine understanding. When you understand someone's psychological operating system, she would always say, you can communicate in ways that make them feel truly seen instead of just managed. This knowledge saved my relationships with every powerful person I can think of in my network. So here's the action point I want you to try. Can you identify the core psychological need driving the behavior of 3 successful people that you know or observe? Can you practice responding to their psychological needs, not just their stated requests? Challenge number 7, how to master the room. And here's the blueprint. If you can't be useful to people in the room, you're just taking up space and you're useless. Wealthy people hate wasted space. Become instantly valuable by reading what the room needs and being able to provide it. And for the story, I'm going to tell you about my relationship, starting with Zimbabwe's billionaire, Kudakwashi Tagwirei. He's the man who taught me the phrase, be usable or be useless. It was at an SDA camp. My first time attending an SDA camp, I meet this guy, quiet guy, named Kuda Tagwirei. Most people barely noticed him. Average height, soft spoken. No, not really average height. He's actually taller than me, but um, soft spoken, unassuming presence. But I watched something extraordinary over the weekend. Every group that Kuda entered, within minutes, he became the person others were naturally turned to for opinions. Every conversation that he joined became more intelligent, and people looked to him for guidance. By Sunday, he was my baptism godfather. By Monday, he had transferred 75,000 US dollars to test a business idea that I'd mentioned to him. Huda taught me the concept of kufadza mtengi, pleasing the customer, but applied it to human psychology. He could read any room and immediately identify the power dynamics, who really makes decisions versus who talks the most in the room, the emotional temperature of a room, what the group needs to feel safe, excited, or motivated, unspoken tensions in the room, what everybody is thinking but nobody is saying, the decision making style that I observed in Kuda was pretty much was how this particular group processes information and reaches conclusions. He mirrored and mastered that. The contribution opportunity, what specific value he could add that no one else was providing. If you can't be useful, you are going to be useless. Wealthy people hate wasted space. He showed me how to become instantly valuable by reading what the room needed and providing it. And whether that was by asking a question that everybody was thinking, offering a perspective, or that everybody was missing, or connecting the dots, sorry, that everybody couldn't see. And so here's the action point you must try. Can you walk into a room of successful people and within 15 minutes become someone who actively want to keep a network with, that people in that room want to keep a network with you? And you can practice the room mastery matrix at every meeting that you're going to go to today. Before you speak, scan the room and the people in the room, the power dynamics, the emotional temperature, the unspoken tensions, the decision making style, and the contribution and opportunities. Okay, so let's go to challenge number 8. I call this the James Makamba Billionaire Mirror. And the blueprint is rich people don't want to feel like you're superior. They want to feel like you're equal who happens to have more resources. So you have to find their mirror level, the place where you are peers, and you have to speak from a place. Always talk about market insights, talk about problems you've identified, solutions you've developed, connections you could make, or perceptions and perspectives that complement their expertise. Here's a story about James Makamba. I met this guy, and let's call the story meet them at their level, right? I met this guy, probably I was 19 at the time. I was working my first corporate job, struggling to connect with senior executives. I felt like a child who was trying to join adult conversations. James Makamba noticed my frustration. He pulled me to the side and he said, "You're making the classic mistake. You're speaking to them, meaning other people, um, from below. That makes them uncomfortable because it creates unnecessary hierarchy." He would continue to say, "Rich people don't want to feel like they're your superior. They want to feel like your equal who happens to have more resources than you. So you have to find their mirror level, the place where you are peers, and that's where you speak from." James Makamba taught me the mirror matching method. Never talk about how much you need the opportunity. Never talk about how grateful you would be for their help. Never talk about how much experience they have compared to you, but always talk about market insights that you've discovered, problems you've identified that they might not see, solutions you've developed that could benefit them, connections that you make or could make that would be valuable to them, perspectives that you have that complement their expertise. The very next week, I was presenting to a board of directors at the largest bank in the UK. Instead of talking about my qualifications, I shared my opinion on market trends. I researched and I brought up questions that I had about their strategy and insights I gathered from my unique position as a young Zimbabwean professional living in the UK. I wasn't the junior guy anymore. I was a peer bringing valuable perspective. This shift led to me getting my first over £50,000, I think it was £85,000 consulting contract within 30 days after my meeting. Your action point that I want you to try today is, can you find common ground with any millionaire that positions you as an equal, not a supplicant? Can you rewrite your introduction, remove all languages that position you as less than them, replace it with language that positions you as different but valuable? Fair? And I know I'm going to wrap up, but I wanted to make this as exhaustive as I could. Challenge number 9, the next generation advance. The blueprint is rich kids are systematically trained to be master networkers. Their parents don't just give them money. Rich kids, their parents give them access to people who control a lot of money. That's the real inheritance. If you can't give your children wealth, give them the ability to build relationships with people who have wealth. Are your kids getting invited to play dates? Are your children being invited to sleepovers? If your kids are cool or they're not cool kids, make your kids cool kids. So let me tell you the story. I'm in the British Youth Parliament, and this is when I'm realizing that rich kids know rich kids. I'm invited to join the British Youth Parliament, and I thought it was just a student government program. Boy, was I wrong. This was a training ground for the children of Britain's most powerful families, kids from Eton, kids from Oxford, Cambridge, not because they were smart, but because they were being prepared to inherit their parents' empires. My mentor at the time was Jewish billionaire James Patterson. His father owned half of Scotland's renewable energy infrastructure. James taught me and told me something that it changed how I think about generational wealth. And he said to me, we don't compete for opportunities because we create them for each other. Time the public opportunities are announced, we've already divided them amongst ourselves. He showed me how it works. Rich kids attend the same school, not for education, but for relationship building. They join the same programs, not for skills, but for network expansion. They're taught from childhood that who you know determines what you can achieve. They practice networking the way poor people and poor kids practice dance moves. James introduced me to Sophie, whose mother runs, whose mother ran, still runs, I guess, the largest private equity fund. Alexander, whose father owns telecommunications infrastructure across Europe. These kids weren't naturally brilliant. They were systematically trained to be master networkers. I remember James would always explain and say, um, our parents don't just give us money, they give us access to the people who control money. That's the real inheritance. So, your action for today, are you preparing your children to network with the next generation of world leaders or just to be good students? Research one program or school or activity where your children could interact with children from intellectual families. A while ago, I built an app which was called Playdates. I exited. It was bought by a much bigger private fund, family office. Actually, they bought the app off me. But the whole point of the app was to take kids and allow kids to go to a place which they would be able to find playdates that they could exchange, almost like Tinder but for kids. There's a lot of those type of platforms out now. So here's the bonus challenge that I spoke to you about. Is I'm going to talk about how to turn your beauty to riches, and this is specifically for the pretty girls. If you are a pretty girl that gets a lot of attention from rich men, you must pay attention to this. Use your assets before they expire. The moment you're 28, you're in incredible trouble because at this point, there is now girls 10 years younger than you who can do everything you think you can do for a man 10 times better. Everything that you are good at, that men care about, a girl 10 years younger than you is way better at it. But men tell secrets. Men tell secrets when they're happy. And in the first 5 minutes of meeting him, he is telling you every single step that he takes when he's making money. A story like that or similar. Listen to me. Men don't even teach their little brothers or their best friends how to make money. But to a woman, they will give up all the secrets in the first couple of minutes of meeting them. So instead of being stupid and clapping your hands for him and you know, ask him this. Say, babe, that is so impressive. Can you teach me how to make just 10% of what you make? To a man, teaching you is a flex. Men love feeling like they put you on. Now, very rich men love teaching women about money. They just never really expect you to actually use what they're teaching you. So let me tell you the story. Should always say, use your AC. Me, I want you. I might understand that you must use your assets before they use you. And she used to work in the city of London, the banking area of the city of London. Absolutely stunning girl, intelligent too. But she worked at the same restaurant for 5 years. Finally, I asked her directly, why are you still waitressing if you're dating millionaires? And remember, she smiled at me and she said, you think I'm just going on dates? I'm actually running the most efficient business education program in London for myself. And here's her system. On every date, she'd ask her companion, the person she's going on a date with, to teach her 10% of what they did. Not 50%, that would threaten them. Just 10% was enough for her to understand their world. Teach me how you spot undervalued companies. For example, is what she'd ask a guy. Show me how you identify emerging markets. Help me understand your investment criteria. Then she would use the money that they spent on her to invest using the strategies that they taught her. 5 years later, from the time I met this girl, she had a £3 million portfolio in the UK. Remember, she flew me to Kenya on a private jet that belonged to one of her business partners who had invested money in a business. And we went to go see her medical waste disposal company with $230 million that government and NGOs were paying her for it to do waste collection in hospitals and medical facilities. Beauty fades, but knowledge compounds. And rich men love teaching beautiful women about money. They just never expect you to actually use what they're teaching you. So here's the action point. If you asked 10 wealthy men to teach you how to make 10% of what they make, how many would say yes? Identify one attractive asset that you have, whether that's beauty, charm, humor, intelligence, and design a system to convert it into financial education from successful people. Bonus challenge number two, the networking in your car strategy. And I'm going to tell you the blueprint of this is your car, if you have a car, is your mobile networking office. If you have access to a car, then you have access to the most underutilized networking opportunity I think is in every city. And here's my story. I was a taxi driver at one point, in my taxi driver days. And I remember I always used to think that like my car is my mobile networking office. Before Uber existed, I used to drive these taxis, not because I needed the money, but because I needed the access. Think about it. Where else can you have 30 to 60 minutes of uninterrupted conversation with successful people from every industry imaginable? I met investment bankers heading to closing dinners. I met tech entrepreneurs who were traveling to pitch meetings. I met property developers who were visiting sites. I met politicians who were going to private events, media executives who were attending launches. My taxi wasn't just transportation, it was a mobile networking office. I kept business cards. I maintained professional conversations. I asked intelligent questions. What did I want to know about their work? What did I want to know about their personalities? I got to engage them and stimulate their minds and followed up with the most interesting passengers that I'd have met. About three of those conversations led to six-figure business opportunities. So here's the action I want you to try today. How many high net worth individuals could you meet in just 1 month if you maximized using your car as a transportation opportunity? If you have a car, sign up for a premium ride sharing service this week. Everything I was just shared to you is, I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of relationship building intelligence that I was trying to just put in as short a format as I could. If you think you want to see if we can do some work together, just DM me and let's see how that goes. None of these things I'm teaching are theories, and none of these things I teach to my clients are theories. They are the exact psychological codes that have generated millions in opportunities for me personally. But knowing and doing are two very different things. That's why I opening up the space that I might be able to take in new private clients. Just maybe. I mean, let's see how it goes. I run a 9-day challenge, and in the 9-day challenge, what we do is 1 hour per day. I do daily coaching calls where we troubleshoot your specific challenge. I take my personal scripts, I take my conversation frameworks, I take my direct feedback that I got to give you direct feedback so that you could use it. And I've used these on presidents and billionaires. Where opportunity is appropriate, I'll introduce some of you to my network that I've built over the last perhaps 20 years. 20 years ago, I was a confused teenager who thought success meant working harder than everybody else. Today, I have relationships with some of the most powerful people on earth. It's not even intelligence, it's understanding that wealthy people are motivated by psychological triggers that most people never learn. The difference between those who build wealth and those who just dream about it is very simple. It's implementation speed. The faster you implement these psychological triggers, the faster wealthy people will start seeing you as someone worth investing in or someone who they want to be around them. I hope you found this useful.